Welcome to Baker Dave Presents. We're here today at the Johnson Hardwick Hall kitchen here at Temple University. It's a working kitchen. Might be some noises, might be some people in the background. Today, my special guest is Lieutenant Colonel Keith Benedict, and he's brought with him his famous recipe for chicken and dumplings, coming right up. Welcome to Baker Dave Presents.
Thanks very much.
This is awesome. I see this is Lieutenant Colonel Keith Benedict. Did I do that right, Lieutenant Colonel?
You did, yep.
Awesome. And you work here on campus?
I do. I'm part of the faculty. I teach military science here for Temple University. I'm also part of the cadre for our 140-person ROTC department.
Holy cow. That sounds like a big deal.
It is. Well, actually, it's a growing deal.
I don't know exactly what it means, but it seems like it's a big deal.
Well, it is, and actually our program is becoming kind of a big deal. We've grown from about 80 to 140 over the last 5 years.
Wow.
And we just recently won a skills competition in October, first out of 44 teams, and for the first time, the Red Diamond Battalion, as we're known here at Temple University, will compete in the World Championships in April.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I
very
didn't know
exciting.
there was a World Championship,
It is.
so I'm totally stoked now.
Yeah, no, it'll happen up at West Point, and it was our 12-person team that represents the battalion that competed, and now they're going to the World Championships.
How do they look? Have you seen the other world teams?
We haven't yet. They're still identifying the other ROTC programs, but there'll be teams from China, from Thailand, Australia,
Really?
the UK. So there'll be a lot of representation. West Point fields a number of teams, and we'll see how we do.
I was going to say, how do they even figure that out? Like, they must be awesome. Like, they must be really good.
Well, they had to get first place out of 44 teams. So they competed in a number of skills competitions, everything from treating a casualty to movement by foot to getting from one place to another, land navigation or orienteering. And so they were number one, and they earned it.
That's amazing. So I'm sure it makes you feel good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just happy to be a part of it. But really, the cadets are remarkable. They're great students. They're athletes and they're leaders. And my job is just to facilitate their growth and development
Steer them in the right direction.
towards Army service if that's what they choose.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Okay, I don't even know what to say about that. 'Cause it seems really cool.
Yeah, no, it is.
Today you're making with us though, because we're not all ROTC every day, right? We cook
Absolutely,
sometimes.
absolutely. Yep.
We're cooking chicken and dumplings.
It is, yep. So it's a family version of chicken and biscuits. It's evolved a little bit. I've been making it for the family for maybe 5 or 6 years when I can, because as you can imagine with Army service, sometimes I'm deployed, sometimes I'm not available. But in the winter months in particular, this is a good kind of hearty family meal that we enjoy together.
How long have you been in the military?
Been in for almost 15 years now, active duty.
Nice.
In November, actually, I hit the point where I've worn a uniform longer than I didn't. You can estimate my age based upon that, because I signed up right when I was 18.
Okay.
But yeah, 15 years of active duty service, a couple of deployments,
Is
lots
this in
of
your
training.
family? Is this like your father was in military, or you know what I mean? A lot of times it seems to run.
Oh, it absolutely does. Actually, about 70% of the military oftentimes has a direct family member that was part of the military as well. And so my father served for 10 years. My grandfather, actually both of them served, one in the Army, one in the Navy. Had a great-grandfather that flew biplanes in World War I.
Holy cow.
So it goes quite a ways back, and it's fun to continue on the tradition.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate obviously everything you've done
Thanks.
for Temple and for this country.
Yeah.
I didn't join the military. That wasn't really my path. But I do have a lot of people in my family that have also been in the military.
Oh, nice.
Served in Vietnam, and my father-in-law, who recently passed, he had been in Vietnam, and his whole family, that was their thing. Which is awesome. Like I said, if you can do it, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Sometimes as I get older, I kind of wish I had done some of that stuff when I was younger. It wasn't where I was going at the time, unfortunately.
No, I knew when I was young it was what I wanted to do, at least for a period of time. I've obviously stuck with it for a while, but you know, I've served at a time when there's been tremendous support for the military. And just think about your father-in-law's experience and my father's generation of soldier. They didn't have people thanking them for their service, and even the cadets who've just only recently donned the uniform, they get thanked for their service. And I think they feel a degree of discomfort with that, because they don't feel like they've done nothing with it yet. But in retrospect, I think it's really then just our job to thank other veterans when we have the opportunity, because the thanks that's directed towards us because we wear the uniform, it really belongs to the whole community.
Absolutely.
Rightly so.
I could totally see that.
Yeah.
So you have a big family? How many, you got kids?
I do, yeah. So my wife Megan, and then 4 kids. My son
cow.
Liam is 12, and then
That's a
I've
good
got,
hearty meal for that then.
It is, and actually, I made a batch of it this weekend, and we thought there'd be a lot of leftovers, but as they're growing, there's fewer and fewer leftovers for my wife to enjoy. So it does make good leftovers, but I need to increase my ratios, I think, in future iterations.
All right, I don't think we're making quite as big a batch today. We're making a fairly small batch,
Yep.
at least from what you'd sent me.
Yep.
But it seems pretty straightforward. You've done this. Are you from this area?
I grew up in Texas and Arizona,
Okay.
so not quite still getting used to winters, but I went to school at West Point in
This
New
winter
York.
will do it for you, though, right?
It will, and this is quite the winter. But my wife actually grew up in Delaware County, so this was a return home of sorts, and
Okay.
we still got family in the area, so we were enjoying getting her back to her roots and that proximity, because Army outposts tend to be where the real estate's less expensive, so they tend to be out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Around the nation, so being in a city environment and a university environment is a lot of fun for us.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So why don't we get started? Because
Okay.
you said you loved making the biscuits. You do them all the time, right?
I typically do not actually, but because I've got little helpers now. All my kids like to.
Kids love doing this.
Well,
stuff,
this is
don't
the
they?
hands-on stuff where you're
Absolutely.
folding in the butter into everything else. So
Well, you're gonna do that
my
today.
little ones happy to do so.
What's cool about this biscuits, I know it's a recipe game, is it uses self-rising flour. Not a very common flour. It's kind of difficult to find. You usually only get a small package of it. Basically, it's flour, but they also already added the baking powder,
Yep.
and they added some salt,
Yep.
and it's kind of ready to go. So when we make biscuits out of this today, we literally are only adding butter and milk to it. That's it. And we're going to end up with a delicious biscuit. And the other thing, too, is I thought this is more of a dumpling, but it's more of like a chicken and biscuits.
Yes.
Because the biscuits are actually baked on their own.
They are.
And then you're kind of pouring this over top of
And
it.
using it to mop up all the
Is this
all the
is this
ingredients
from
in
your
there.
southern roots, so to speak, or
It could be a bit of a
you have no idea.
just a bit of a hybrid. I think I found it online at one point in time. Actually, we were living in the north. I was teaching at West Point, and my wife was struggling with the lack of sunlight in a particularly cold winter. And one time I found this recipe, actually just looking around, made a few modifications to it, just experimenting, and it hit a home run. And so it's stuck for us
It's
as a
very
family.
like this is what you want to eat when it's cold. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
a very stick to your ribs,
Yep.
warm, hearty meal. I'm very excited about this. So you're going to actually start it, 'cause like I said, I feel like you should know what it's like if you're going to make your kids do it.
Absolutely. It's been
Right?
a while. I'm rusty. Yep.
So the key to this really is to mix it with your hands.
Yep.
I don't like using a lot of tools.
Yep.
If you ever watched any of the episodes before, I try to use as little tools as possible. I don't think your kitchen needs to be full of stuff. This is a hands-on type of thing.
Yep.
Stick your hands in there.
All right.
Just start
Jumping right
breaking
in.
up the butter into the flour mixture.
Yep.
And don't be afraid of it. Break
Yep.
it down. Ultimately, you want little pea-sized pieces of fat.
Yep.
So what'll happen is once we add the milk to it, it's all going to come together. We don't want to overmix it. That's the key to biscuits, is
Yep.
not to overmix it. You
Yep.
barely incorporate it. You still have your little chunks of fat in there, and when they cook, the fat that's in there creates these little pockets. So it makes it kind of almost flaky in its
yep.
way. You know what I mean?
Create space for it to open
Yeah,
up. Yep.
so it's a very science thing. This is the most sciencey we're doing today, because obviously the rest of it's cooking and it's a little less sciencey.
Yep.
There's a little bit going on, but that looks good. You're doing a good job. I can see why you have the kids do it, because it'd be like 3 days for you to do this, wouldn't it?
I'm slow. Yeah, I admit it. Well, and I think in general, when you're cooking, I tend to not want to put my hands in there. I think just from a germ standpoint, and of course here I
You
say
did wash your hands, right?
I did. Well,
Oh,
here I
good.
say that knowing that I put my kids on this task, and I think that probably takes
Their
some.
germs are probably more. They probably have more germs. I
Oh
would
yes,
think.
and they would do this all day if they could. So the other piece I try to watch for is to not over mix it too, because that's part of the recipe as well, is to make sure that it will be more dense. I think, as I understand the science behind it, if you do overwork it.
If
then
you
it will be-
overwork, you ever had a cookie that's been, and that's where I always notice it, especially biscuits, you'll really notice it, but it just feels tough.
Yep.
It doesn't feel.
Yep. And these
So-
you want to be light and airy.
This is perfect, I think. Now, if you look at this, you'll see there's like little chunks. That's the fat. That's fine. It doesn't have to be mixed perfectly.
Yep.
You don't want like a whole floury mixture here.
Yep.
We're then going to add the milk to that.
Yep.
Literally just stir it with your hand.
Yep.
Not just even like just one hand. Just stir
Okay.
it up until it comes together as a clump.
That does work better than obviously my usual technique. I'll admit sometimes the biscuits do originate from the things that come in a can, I'm ashamed to say.
It's
But
okay.
that
We do
it
that
does,
too.
it does,
I'm not ashamed to say
it does
that at
happen
all.
so much easier. And this sometimes
In
is a busy.
2018, it seems that we all lead very busy lives.
Yep.
And we don't always have time to do stuff. But this is actually very simple. So this shouldn't be something that takes a lot of time.
Nope.
So already I'd say stop.
Yep.
Now you'll notice there is some dryness in here. That's fine. I'd rather you have a little bit of dryness than to overmix it, because that gives you an opportunity for.
There we go.
We're kind of gathering it up now.
Yep.
And then we're gonna shape it. We'll get rid of this. And we'll actually just kind of shape this.
Add that in
You're
there.
not wasting
There we
that,
go.
are you?
No,
That's
it's just
that's a
sticking.
biscuit and a half.
I should have floured
Just
my
some
hands
flour,
up beforehand.
Well, no, stick it.
All right, there we go. And
And then it'll
off.
just wash. Yeah, it'll kind of break right off, right? The
Good.
flour. Look
Yep.
at you.
I figured I would learn something today from Baker Dave, because as I said, this is not
I'm
my
learning
forte.
something from you. What are you talking
I
about?
deal with the pot more so than everything else.
So this one I noticed they end up pretty big, the biscuits.
Yep.
I will probably be eating half of a portion because holy cow. But basically just kind of flatten it out. Another key to biscuits is you never roll. I don't roll out biscuits. I don't know why anybody would ever use a rolling pin on a biscuit.
Yeah, it's going to make it even denser.
Exactly. You're working it even harder. You literally just your fingers, and it's okay if it's got little dimples in it. And I use my pastry cutter here. We'll just cut it in 6 pieces.
6 would be perfect for the family. Yep.
And I mean, this will fill you up. These biscuits alone will fill you up. Are you kidding me? I was noticing that when we were working with them. This is a lot.
Yep.
We're gonna go ahead and stick this in the oven.
All right.
Your oven's just like this at home, right?
A little smaller. Yep.
You can I actually ride around in there sometimes just for fun. Well, it's not really.
Not really
fun, right?
recommended, I would think.
No, you should. Well, as long as it's off, it's okay. Just I wouldn't do it when it's on.
Yep.
Okay, so we can set that aside when we start cooking the
All right,
actual.
I'm going to go rinse my hands off.
You can do that.
I'll do that.
You can rinse
There
your
we
hands
go.
off.
Yep.
This is the difference when you're in the military. I guess it's important that you stay neat and clean all the time. It is for
Hardly,
cooking
yeah.
too. Don't get me wrong. I
Hardly.
100% stay neat and clean. I do know that the ingredients that we just used, none of them are going to be a cross-contamination bacteria problem for me.
There we go. Yep.
I'm less concerned about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this on.
Yep, and get the butter melting.
We're going to add some butter, and we're going to add
All the root vegetables
onions,
first. Yep. Celery.
and
Yep,
carrots. Now, you probably didn't realize this, but you're obviously classically French trained for your cooking right there, because that would be a mirepoix. So
Mirepoix. Okay. No.
you said you wanted to learn something. I'm trying to teach you something.
I'm listening too, because I knew mise en place, but not mirepoix.
Mirepoix.
And that
So-
refers specifically to the root vegetables, or
It's usually these 3 vegetables.
okay.
Typically.
Yep.
And the idea is, and
I hadn't heard that before.
I'm not super great at it
Yep.
because this heat is super high. But the idea is that you are supposed to cook it slower.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to actually saute it. You're not trying to get color and caramelize anything.
Yep.
You're just trying to kind of sweat it down and cook
Yep.
it.
Kind of al dente.
You're just trying to
toward the
get
end.
them cooked and get the flavors
Yep.
mixing together and being happy.
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Usually about now is when my wife can smell it, especially once we add the salt and pepper, and starts to emanate. Then usually from upstairs, I can hear her, and she knows that it's coming.
She can smell it from this.
Oh yeah, she can. The onions. As soon as the onions
She's
hit
got some
that,
awesome
yeah,
nose
she
going on
does.
there.
Yep, she does. 4 kids will do that.
That'll definitely happen. So I just have salt and pepper, obviously, in
Yep.
like a thing.
Yep.
Feel free to add whatever you're comfortable with.
Yep. We go pretty heavy actually. I like the coarse ground on the salt there.
The what?
The coarse ground.
Oh
That's
yeah.
nice,
I feel like you have better control over that. When
Yep.
it's real tiny, it's hard to tell what you're working with.
Yep. And as I always have to remind my kids, you can always add more. Of course, it's hard to subtract once you put in.
Right.
salt
I
and
noticed
pepper.
in the recipe it had fresh thyme.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any fresh thyme.
Okay.
So since we're using dried thyme,
Yep.
you could actually add that earlier if you
Earlier.
like,
Yep.
as opposed to waiting till later. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think I'll save it for when we add in the chicken stock, because then it tends to kind of absorb the chicken stock, I think, a little bit more that way.
Okay.
Yeah, but now is the smell where she would
She's
start
like,
to pick
oh,
up
good,
on
I'm
that. Yep.
coming down.
Yep.
So, like I said, that's a lot too, a lot of those vegetables, but they reduce down a little bit.
They do. Yep, and the ratio ends up being about right. And and it's not exact science at home. There is the recipe, but sometimes I'll throw in more of the vegetables if that's what we're feeling or that's what was in the kitchen, whatever, you know, whatever.
What
it
are
is.
some of your other variations you might do?
Sometimes we might throw, actually just this weekend I threw in some scallions with that as well, where we would cook the white portion after we had diced those, and then we'd put the green portions of the scallions on there at the end just to dress it and give it a little bit more of a crunch afterwards too, because some of these will get kind of soft. I've also sometimes experimented with the carrots and maybe cooking them down or boiling them for a little bit to soften them as well, because I think compared to the onion and the celery, they're a little bit firmer. And
they are.
Once you cook them, if you cook them all at the same time. But it really depends on what kind of texture I'm driving towards or feeling that day.
I like a little bite in my food
Yep.
myself. I like to feel the food I'm eating.
Yep.
Once you've cooked this for a little while, you'll notice, because they're coated in fat at this point.
Yep. And
So
butter.
moving on to our French cooking class here.
Okay.
We're actually going to add flour to that, right?
Right.
Which is going to take the flour, is going to mix with the fat in there and actually create a roux.
Roux. Okay. Yep.
So that's how you create your sauce. That
Yep.
once you add your chicken stock, it'll thicken it.
Thicken it up. Yep.
Exactly, because if you add flour or something directly into your chicken sauce,
Yep.
just lumps of it'll cook.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden you'll have like your flour noodles or something.
Yep.
I don't know what.
And it's a fine balance too, because I think if you put in in times when I put the flour in there, if I let it go for too long without adding the stock, then it starts to scorch a little bit on
It
there.
becomes like a brown
Yep.
roux, a darker roux.
Yep.
Which would be good for your like Louisiana style cooking. A lot of times
okay.
they make gumbos and stuff where
Yep.
they actually make the roux, and they're trying to get that nuttier flavor out of it.
Yep.
You're not.
Nope.
So that there for you, it's a fine line, like you said. You don't want to overcook it.
Yep.
The key is once you start cooking though, and once you add the other stuff into it, you want to make sure that you cook. Once the liquid's in there and you've added your flour, you want to cook the starch flavor out. Nobody wants to taste that floury flavor.
Right.
They just want it to be a little thicker.
Yep.
So you want to actually boil it for a minute. It'll thicken up, and then a minute or so past that, you'll see the thicker bubbles coming
Yep.
up because you're trying to get that floury taste out of it.
Yep. And just
You ever
turn it down
have
to a simmer
gravy
at
or
that
something
point.
that tastes kind of floury because they didn't cook it long enough?
Ah. Okay.
They didn't actually get that flavor out. So
Yep.
this is looking beautiful. Like
Yep.
I said, these are all like they're not really colored. They're
Nope.
just starting to
Yep.
come down a little bit.
Yep. The
That's-
onions start to get a little bit translucent, and then you know,
Translucent,
you know.
exactly.
Yep.
You don't want that like I said, the caramelized color or whatever on there.
Right.
You really want it to be.
Yep. And the recipe typically says 8 to 10 minutes, but I think it depends on the heat of the burner. And I know you said this one goes kind of hot.
And I
so
mean,
it'll
it
go
all
faster
depends
than
on
that.
how, like you said, I kind of like it with a little chunk or a little crunch in it. You
Yep.
seem to like it with a little crunch
Yep,
in it, so
I
we
do.
can rush it a little bit,
Yep.
right?
Yep. You can.
If you want it to be a little softer, you're going to want to cook it slower and a
Yep.
lower temperature. So we'll add the flour in there, and like I said, once you stir that around,
Yep.
it doesn't look like it's doing anything, but it's mixing with the fat.
Yep.
So it's more clumpy now. Like it's not all separated like it was a minute ago.
Yep.
And then the next thing that will get added will be the liquid.
Yep.
That's the
Liquid and the thyme.
the
and
chicken
some
stock,
thyme.
right?
Yep.
And one of the things I like to tell people too, as far as chicken stock goes, I don't know if you ever do this, but I love doing this. I'll take, you go to the grocery store or whatever, you come home with a little rotisserie.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that after we're done eating it.
Yep.
I'll take the rotisserie and all the stuff that's in the bottom,
Yep.
throw it in a pan with some water, and make my
Absolutely.
own stock.
Yep. Yeah, my
That's-
brother-in-law does that same thing with turkey after Thanksgiving and gets a really good turkey stock going doing that same thing.
So we add all of our stock into it. You
Yep,
want to add
and
the
then thyme
thyme?
as well. Yep. And sometimes I'll add water or reduce it down a little bit more depending on how soupy
And right
we
now
want
you'll
the
see how
texture to
liquidy
be.
that is right
Yep.
now. In a second, the flour is going to take hold, and it's actually going to become thicker,
Yep, more like a stew.
which is what we're going for, right?
Yep.
And then to make it richer, we're going to add cream eventually.
And the thyme is instantaneous. You can start to smell it as soon as it hits the pot.
Well, it's interesting. I just thought of this now. I was talking about the rotisserie, and the recipe it actually suggests using rotisserie chicken that's
Right.
already cooked.
Yep.
So if you were doing that, you'd have all of that stuff
could
there
just make the
anyway. So you
stock
wouldn't
right
even have
there.
to buy the separate stock.
Yep.
You already kind of have your own stock, which
Yep.
is really great.
I think this weekend when I was cooking, my wife was torturing the kids once I threw the thyme in and was talking with my daughter Genevieve about time. And then, of course, my wife starts singing Time After Time in the background and torturing the kids with the 80s music, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're a fan of the 80s music?
She throws it out there every once in a while, yep.
Trying to get this really boiling here so it can thicken up a
Yeah,
little
you can
bit.
see it starting to take hold.
It's starting to get a little thicker, as you can see. And then, like I said, once we add the cream in, it'll even. And at this point, that's the thing too. If you if your carrots aren't fully cooked and then you go into this part, they're still cooking. They're still on the heat.
Getting softer.
Like keep it going. Like if you overcook it from the beginning, now we're getting it. You see that? And I know a lot of people will make dumplings and they won't have the cream in it. You have the cream being added in, and your dumplings are, like I said, a baked biscuit as opposed to being boiled actually into it. Which a lot of times you'll take that same biscuit dough.
That's more the dumpling style.
And drop it in there and let it cook into the stuff. But this is really it's starting to get happy. It's getting all nice and thick in there. Because you want something juicy in there to be able to soak into the biscuit.
Absolutely.
When you get to that point.
That's the best part.
How old are your kids?
So my son's 12, Liam, and then I've got 3 daughters. We call them the Neapolitan girls because it goes brunette, blonde, and redhead, so chocolate, vanilla, strawberry.
That's hysterical.
Anastasia, Genevieve, and Gabriella. The little princesses.
We're adding half and half. We're not trying to be health conscious here.
Nope, not at all. That's not, for this one, typically actually just when I made it on Saturday, we had just worked out outside. It was 15 degrees. The kids ran hills with me. I was just trying to see.
It's not like you need to lose weight. You obviously look like you're in very good shape.
Well, no, but in order to eat these kinds of things, I've got to do something. As the years go by, I've got to work harder if I want to keep eating what I want.
I just started trying to do yoga, thinking, hey, how hard
Good for
could
you.
that be? Have you done yoga?
Good for you. Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's a lot more difficult than you give it credit for.
Like
as you're holding these poses. And I think when I was younger, it was probably easier.
Absolutely.
But as I get older, it becomes more and more difficult.
It is. It's vital, though. My wife actually works as a physical therapy aide, and as she works with folks who've lost flexibility and the challenges that gives you for quality of life, that yoga is one of the most important things.
I'm really hoping, like for my back and knees and stuff.
Yep.
See how beautiful that looks, that color there? Like that's a perfect, almost like a cream soup at this point. You could really do the same thing if you add a little more stock and you have your cream and stuff in there. Throw some potatoes in there and some cheese or whatever.
We're not a mushroom family, but I think you could probably throw them in there and give it some of that earthy.
That's good. I'm not a mushroom person either.
Yeah, we're not. We skip that part.
So we want to add the chicken at this point, right?
Yep.
It's a lot of chicken too. I noticed. This is no joke.
It is. No, it ends up being pretty hearty once it's all in there.
It's like 3 cups of chicken for this. So I mean, it's.
Yeah, almost a whole rotisserie chicken, depending on the size that you get for that. But it definitely gives it's to the stick to the ribs type.
That is no joke. This is a stew.
Yep.
This is for when you've been running the hills or whatever it was. What did you say you were doing?
Yep, the kids and I were running hills together outside. It was about 15 degrees, and I wanted to see if they were willing to join me, and they did. And then we had this
my daughter
afterwards.
outside when it's 15 degrees outside.
I was pleasantly surprised, and they did real well. Yeah.
It's been very cold. Holy cow. Isn't it hard to breathe in that weather when you're running around?
It is, and you get that unpleasant feeling in your lungs where it feels like they're not happy with you when you do it. But you're always, I think when you work out, the first step is always the most important part, because once you do that, you're there, you've committed, you may as well just do it, and afterwards you're always thankful that you did it.
You always feel better. I said the same thing when I was doing the yoga the other day. I always feel better. Like I don't feel like doing it. I don't think anybody does. That's the thing about working out, right? Nobody wants to work out. There's nobody out there that's like, I can't wait to be uncomfortable and irritable. Like
I've got some folks that wear this uniform that probably that's true, but I'm not in that camp.
But I don't think even so. Like you would choose anything else. Like there's plenty of things out there to do that would be fun, right?
Yep.
But once you do it, it's worth it.
Right.
Like you feel good about yourself. You feel good afterwards. It's totally. It's just like you said, making that first step.
Yep. Yeah, my wife and I are trying to include the kids more in those kinds of things too, because you hate it for it to be something else that's away from your family when you're doing it. So doing it together, it does create more time together.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's super, and so family is obviously very important to you.
Well, it is, and I think that as time has gone on in the Army, we talk a lot about balance and your professional life and your home life, but it's truly about, I think the danger with using a term like balance is you're not going to have 50-50 as far as time, and so it's really got to be more about quality rather than quantity. And I think for a long time I was yearning, I think many people yearn for that quantity of time, but you're not going to get it. It's just not the way it works.
I mean, if you get 6 hours of sitting in front of the television with your kid sitting next to you in front of the television, or you get a half hour of out doing something, which is more valuable. You know what I mean? Like,
more memorable and more meaningful for everybody. Absolutely.
I've had that conversation with several people. When they first have kids, they think that well, we got to take them to Disney when they're 4, and we got to do this because that's what they'll remember. And it's not what they remember. Yeah. They remember when every night you went and tucked them in and read them a bedtime story.
Routine.
It's the routines they remember, and that's the important things when. And I'm sure with the military, it's the same type of thing. Like you're building these kids into men,
Yep.
right? And in your situation here with the ROTC.
Yep, yeah, men and women. Yeah,
women.
and the one of the adages I use with the ROTC cadets is how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're going to do that task, you know, with half of your effort, then that's probably how you're going to treat a lot of different things in your life. But if you apply yourself fully, and sometimes it does mean saying no because you can only do so much. But when you say yes to something, you want to be the same professional to that or the same caretaker to your children as you would be to your folks in your unit or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I smelled those biscuits about
They're
ready.
probably there. Yep.
Yeah, they look great.
Yep, those look nice.
All right, so you'll notice at home you probably get a little more color on your biscuits, right?
So yeah, sometimes, and I know when certainly if you were to cook them on top of the stew, they would definitely have more of that browned color, color to it. But we usually, I think we're just looking for a light and flaky biscuit. Looks like that's what we got.
Right. So it
Yep.
worked out good.
Yep.
That's what I was going to say. So in my oven,
Yep.
it bakes a little bit differently. So I've got the color on the bottom. It doesn't get as much color on top because it's such an even bake in there.
Nice.
Like because it actually rotates inside of it.
Okay.
It actually evens out the baking process,
Yep.
so it cooks a little bit slower.
That avoids the issue of having to rotate the pan in there and anything like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So
Yep.
let's try this stuff out, man.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, we could add the peas, and yeah, at this point in time, that could be a
Let's add the peas.
last
Holy
minute
cow.
add. We've done other variations. Corn, of course, can give it a sweetness. The kids sometimes like that, but typically we
I like
use
the peas because
Yep.
it feels like healthier. I
Yep.
don't know. It's
Yep.
a little bit of green and it feels
Yep.
good.
Yep.
I'm super happy with the peas in there. So let's try this out.
All
man.
right.
I don't know how hungry you are right now. I figured we could share one now.
It's lunchtime.
Oh, you can have a whole one.
Yeah.
Holy cow. You're right. Me too, man. Let's break these. You want to break it in half
Yep.
so you can put the stuff on it?
Yep.
I didn't want to play with your biscuit too much because I know you don't like people playing with your food.
That's
I
true.
don't either,
Especially
but
after
whatever
it's
that's
been,
worth.
Yeah, whatever germs were on it, well, it got taken care of while it was in
That's
there.
the beauty of the
yeah.
oven, right?
Yep.
It's like 350 degrees in there. It's
Yep.
going to kill just about everything.
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm going to put some on mine because I don't know. Maybe you prefer certain things over other things.
Nope, that's what we do. Just dump it on there. Sometimes I'll do that with half, and then the other half I'll use to scoop up the
You
bowl
use both
afterwards.
sides?
Well, the second one usually I'll use to scoop out my own bowl afterwards.
All right, I'm
to
just going to leave it
scrape
with
off
one
my
because I
goodness.
feel like
Okay.
that's enough. Like maybe I didn't run hills in 15-degree weather.
I didn't do it this morning
Oh,
either.
well, you
but
could have.
Yeah, I
I
could have.
think it was about the same temperature
that
this
was
morning.
that was an option.
Did you want to go out and do it now? I can run with you.
No.
No, I was like, holy cow. He almost took me up on it. I was like, wait a minute. What am I getting into here?
Wasn't sure where we were going to go with that, but I almost
Oh.
wanted to see where you would go with it. Yeah.
That was a close one.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. Let's check this out, man. This looks awesome. This looks like exactly what I think of when I think of a very hearty chicken.
Yep. Perfect for a
dumplings,
cold day.
Biscuits. Hard for me to get a little bit of everything on the fork.
And plastic cutlery. Yep.
That's perfect.
Yep. So on a down day or a quiet day on the weekends, this was definitely the go-to meal for this. It's either this or it's Mexican food. I think Mexican food, we tend to air that on the summertime, and then for
That's
this,
true.
it's
Why
it's
is that?
It's just something makes you sweat, cools you off a little bit.
Is that what it is?
Yep. I think
See,
that's
I
why.
always tell people that I think that hotter climates have spicier food because they have to,
Get you
100
sweating.
years ago, 200 years ago, there was no refrigeration.
Yep.
And that spice actually kills a lot of bacteria, so you could keep
Oh,
preserves
interesting.
meat and keep the food longer.
Yeah.
So I assume that's why.
I'd also heard too that because it makes you sweat, that actually cools you off too. Because if you do eat a really spicy
make
food,
sense.
when I visited Thailand a few years ago, that was my first exposure. A 95-degree day. Went outside working with the non-governmental organization folks I was working with, and they broke out dom yum soup, very very spicy Thai soup, and I was
Yeah.
sweating instantly, and it helped. There on
That's
that hot
awesome.
street. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me. This,
Yeah. Thanks,
this was
Benedict. I really
delicious.
appreciate it. Yeah. No, I sincerely appreciate it. Nicely done. It was very good.
Yeah, nicely done. Exactly. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it.
A special thanks goes out to Lieutenant Colonel Keith Benedict for his delicious chicken and dumplings recipe. Join us again next time when Baker Dave Presents, and remember, every recipe has a story.